Most of us spend so many years trying to fix what's wrong with us, or at least what we think is wrong with us, and almost no time learning to recognize what is already right. So what if self-knowledge wasn't about finding your flaws, but finding yourself and giving yourself permission to see yourself fully? Today's guest has built her life and her work around the exact premise that you don't need to be fixed. You just got to get to know yourself. And she has the receipts. And so today here on The Expansion Room, I am joined by Kristan Swan, author, journal creator, and self-knowledge advocate whose own winding path has led her to one powerful conclusion. The most transformative tool that we all have is our own story, our own, not someone else's. And so we're going to be talking about the stories that you inherited and the ones you've been carrying around without question, and how to finally sort through and find out what yours are and what ones you need to release. So, Kristan, welcome back to the Expansion Room. And I say welcome back because to my audience, when you're recording a podcast, every now and then there's a little bit of a hiccup or snafu. And so Kristan was here about a month ago to record with me, and we were all in like an hour and 10 minutes in. And that's when I realized it had not recorded. But she was so gracious to come back and join me for this conversation. And I think it'll be even better today.
Oh, I know it will be better. And thank you so much, Shervon. I mean, I feel like I've come back. You are an old friend at this point, right? And so we are so comfortable with each other, and we did have such a great conversation. And I promise your audience, it is even going to be better today. And the beauty of me coming on today, and I was joking about this before we hit record, was that I've had my own snafu today. So I was in just a rush to get my end of the month newsletter out, right? All of a sudden I'm like, oh gosh, yesterday's the end of the month and I got to get my newsletter out. And I've been thinking about it, but I haven't done anything about it. And in between, I'm kind of helping my mom on a project, and we've got a holiday weekend coming up. So there's that kind of truncated week that just makes me feel like, I'm, squeezed from all sides, right? Yes. So here I am, late at night, and I'm so proud of myself because I hit send and put it out into the world. And I looked at it, and there was just something that felt a little off, but I'm like, it's fine. We're just going to do this. And this morning, one of my first emails that I read was from my dear, dear friend who is a former book editor, publisher, so is in that whole world. And she very gently in her email said, I'm not sure that you wanted, I think the word that you wanted, because I said first peak, and I used like peak of a mountain instead of peak as in seeing like a sneak peek of something, right?
Gotcha.
And she's so sweet because she says, I'm sure it was autocorrect that did this, right? And I also am kind of not sure if you want me to proofread this email. Like, she doesn't realize that this has gone out to my entire mailing.
The whole, yeah.
And, and I just laughed. I thought, this is because the other funny coincidence or synchronicity with all of this. So I share that with you, the humanity of it, right?
Indeed, right?
And we happen to be recording on a Wednesday, and I do a little thing where I post Wednesday wisdom and I pull from quotes and sayings of people. And so today's saying I had already picked out was slow down to go fast.
Yes. Yes. There we go.
Here we go. And, and I feel like that has been so much of my work and my life's journey has been this kind of noticing and creating tools for my clients and making myself available to my clients, depending on what my profession was at that time. And I'm always the one who has to listen to my own advice, right? I'm always the one who ultimately, whichever journal I'm in the process of creating, and whichever workbook, or it's like, this is the stuff that I need. And and it's so easy for us to always see what is outside of us, right? And what is in others. And it's kind of a universal thing, I think, that, well, at least for myself, is just the tremendous blind spot around kind of your own self-knowledge or self-awareness.
Absolutely. We create from our lived experience in these spaces. That's really what happens, and I believe what has to happen. Like, my coaching program is the coaching program I needed like 10 years ago, right? 5 years ago. And so I created it based out of my own experience, because I knew how hard it was to get to where I am now. Creating from your lived experience is so key.
It's so key. And hopefully, I mean, you mentioned in that beautiful intro, thank you so much for that. Just the way that my work has, helped and informed my own growth and expansion, right? I love this word, expansion.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me, because I know now how available our own wisdom is, right? Our own inner knowing. It's there. Yes. It is there. And it is literally just waiting for us to stop and pay attention.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. You got it. And in light of what you just shared there, what were some of the stories that kind of grew up with you, or that you grew up with, that you had to then look at and put the light of your own inner wisdom on?
Oh, yeah. Well, so there's so many, and I was in anticipation of our conversation today. I was thinking about, and there's these levels of stories. And so there's oftentimes, I've talked about, prior to the work that I do now, I worked with independent business owners and was business coaching. And again, based on my lived experience of starting my own business with no idea what I was doing and learning everything from scratch and doing things the hard way. And because that was one of the stories that I had inherited, which was, in order to be a good person, you have to work hard. Yes. And what hard work looks like is, it looks like you putting work first and foremost at all cost to your own health and well-being, to other important relationships in your life, and just other activities that actually feed your soul, right? So there was that you have to make this incredible kind of commitment to your work. And not only do you have to commit yourself kind of body and soul to the work, but it's don't expect it to be fun or joyful.
Right.
Like it is just going to be a grind.
That's right.
And
it is what it is.
It is what it is. and that was such a story that I received from my family, and because there was no sense of, gosh, if you are enjoying your work, that it must really be a great fit for who you are, or that you would even pursue a profession that would feed you in that way.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so, I mean, it was only that until I was at the point of, just exhausted, not really, making a lot of choices in my business that were not advantageous to, the business that I was saying I wanted to build. And I wasn't making any money. I mean, I barely was breaking even at times. So that kind of, I feel like, was something that is a fairly common story, probably, that a lot of us have. Yeah. And that one was pretty easy to, not easy. That one was simple, let's say, to recognize, right? Because I had a bank statement, I had, I had my files, I had several points of data that were staring me down, saying, the way that you're thinking about work and the way that you're going at it is not working. So that one was a more simple story. I would say probably the most challenging story for me to, number one, recognize, and number two, really understand it as an inherited belief, was the story that I needed to prove that I belonged. That I belonged in the room, that I belonged in just taking up oxygen on Earth, that I belonged, and I guess tied with that is that I belonged and that I could receive love.
Yeah.
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 That wasn't conditionally, tied to something.
Absolutely. And that is a big realization, isn't it? To let go of this notion that in order for me to be loved, I have to be perfect, or I have to do all of these things in order to be loved.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And that's a big one. That could be life shifting. How old or how far into your life experience as an adult did you realize that, that might not be true?
Well, we talked about that our inner wisdom, that knowing that we have, that we came, I believe, into this world with, is always there. And it is generally pretty quiet, and is not going to be, screaming, jumping in front of your face, saying, "Hey, I got news for you." So I do believe that there were these moments. I'm stalling because I'm embarrassed to admit that it took me to be at least 40 years old before I was willing to recognize that as such a core belief of mine. And so first I had to just notice that belief, right? That story.
Yeah.
And I made that story into a foundational piece of my belief system, right? So I think this is what happens sometimes with these inherited stories, these acquired stories, is we begin to say, oh, these are my own story, right?
Right. That's right.
So I'm thinking that this is just, this is me. This is the way it always is. So first, just saying, I think that there's something off about this belief. And then recognizing, kind of getting curious, doing some, investigating, like why would I even think that? Right? I don't believe that about anyone else. I never question anyone else's, lovability or their right to hold space. So why would I believe that? So and then I could get more information as I got curious with it, around where would that come from. And it's I think, well, I know that a lot of that story came from my parents and from my grandparents. And I think to a certain extent, my parents had inherited my grandparents', belief around this.
Absolutely.
And there was no malintent. There was no conscious kind of delivery of this belief or story to me, right? And in fact, so much of what they would say to me was in contradiction to that. But these stories are so strong, right? Of course. They make us kind of discount what we may be hearing.
Absolutely. Sometimes they're auditory, but many times we pick them up by their behavior.
Yes.
And how they treat one another, how they treat us, how we see, especially when we're kids, how we see adults behave. And we take that in, we absorb it, especially before 8 years old. All of it just gets absorbed. And so those stories, those inherited stories, become beliefs because they get repeated over time, and then patterns of behavior. And then eventually our identities really hinge or hang on those, right? And so when you started to really assess these old beliefs and saw that they led back to old inherited stories, was there a point where you were able to say, hey, I'm going to let that go? Or was it a process for you?
I would love to say that it was like flipping a switch.
Right?
I would love to say that, because I would love to offer that to the audience and just say, It's this. You can do it like that. No.
Right.
In part because, as you mentioned, I mean, you bring up so many good points there, is yes, so much of our identity begins to hinge on these beliefs, right? So for me, you know, the translation of that is my self-worth is, and my lovability is, or my right to belong is deeply connected to kind of what I can do, kind of how I can provide value to a situation, right? So, and then what that looks like in terms of patterns of behavior is, it looked like a lot of people pleasing, right? So really kind of trying to be, in some cases, like a mind reader, right?
Yeah.
For family members and significant others and friends, I mean, or clients. I mean, just thinking like, oh gosh, I need to be I need to be anticipating what you want before you even say it, right? So putting this this really crazy amount of pressure on myself to do something that is not really not realistic, to say the least, and also saying yes to too much. Right. So again, kind of deeply connected to that people pleasing. So saying yes to kind of everything, and really, particularly in terms of my relationship with the significant others in my life, and even more specifically, my two past marriages, is being in a relationship with men that I felt like I always had to prove myself, right? That I was a good partner, or a good spouse, or a good, it wasn't enough that, and that perfection piece. Right. So you, and this was all, I mean, I was choosing to put this on myself.
Oh yeah. Yeah. But the foundation of that choosing was those old inherited stories, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And interwoven in those inherited stories, and all of us have inherited stories that we eventually, at some point in our adulthood, have to assess and reassess. But the root of so many of them is this idea that we are not enough, right? That what you said a few minutes ago, that you had to work for love, right? That you couldn't just be loved without doing anything, just because you were here, right? And I think that's, for a lot of people, their experience in the world. And I think even more so, women, people who were born into female bodies, because there's this inherited belief under patriarchy that we have to earn something about our existence. And we have to be the perfect child, have to be the perfect student. We have to be the perfect, eventually, girlfriend, partner, wife, and eventually the perfect mother. I've had so many conversations with women who are parents, and the drive to be the quote unquote perfect mother is unbearable. I'm like, wow. And hold the job.
Right. Yes. Well, and it's so interesting because the high school that I graduated from is It still is in existence, and it is a single-sex school. It's a all-girl school, and it was so interesting because at the time that I was graduating, there was this talk about a story, and and again, you can you can inherit stories at any time during your life, right? Like so here I am, a young woman, and so there was there was no question about going to school or not after graduating from high school. And there really wasn't any conversation about what that school would look like. I mean, it was pretty much assumed that it would be a 4-year institution, right?
Okay.
And so check that box, that box. I graduate, I get into a 4-year school, check. And along the way, that other inherited story from high school and where, these teachers are, building these young women that are going to go out and they're educated and they're curious and they're, all this stuff. So we are supposed to get a job. We also are supposed to get married, and we are definitely supposed to have a family. And also it's not supposed to be just like any job. It's supposed to be probably a job that requires even an advanced degree beyond our bachelor's. And I remember getting into college, and I'm in the midst of college, and I was all in on that dream, right? That story sounded great to me. And I started thinking about it, and I remember thinking, like, I don't know how you do all that. And I guess I think I was in college when this was happening, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, so let me just do the math, right? I'm going to be X number of years old when I get out of college. And if I take some time off to work and then, create some savings so I can get my advanced degree. And then, I can't imagine, like, I'm trying to do, it's like this puzzle where I'm like, okay, so at what point am I supposed to have kids? And where am I supposed to meet this person? Because the people that I'm meeting at college, I mean, they're lovely and we're having a lot of fun, but I don't see, like, I don't know that there's like a forever person here. So like, where am I, and finally I was like, whew, I don't know how this is going to work out. And, I ultimately, my first marriage, the father of my kids, it was so interesting because we met. He was one of the first people I'd ever dated that I didn't know from school or friends or whatever.
Gotcha.
And it was kind of a fluke that we met, and we started dating, and he was quite a bit older than I was. And that actually seemed kind of good at the time because the guys that I had been dating, I was like, yeah, these guys, they're trying to figure out what they're doing, and it's kind of annoying, and I don't know if I have the patience for that. Like so when I meet this person who seems like a fully formed adult, right? Seems is the operative word. And, has a job, has a sedan, right? Has a very, grown up car. Doesn't have one of these, and yeah, I mean, the things that when I say this, I just laugh at myself, and I was like, oh, and he wears suits. Like, that's okay. So he must really be an adult, right? And so all these, I know all these things. And as we were getting more serious, the one thing that I knew to be true for myself, despite like so much unknowing about myself is I knew I wanted to be a parent. And he wanted to be a parent too. And we had talked about the fact that both of our moms had worked all during our upbringing. And so we had talked specifically about how important it would be to have me, specifically, we named me because he was, on this career and I was still kind of doing, I wasn't doing important work really at the time. And so it would be me staying at home, which was absolutely fine with me. I loved that idea.
Yeah.
And so when we had our first child, it was so interesting because it was great. I just loved. I was so prepared to love my son, and I was not prepared to be so in love with him.
No.
He just was, I just was in awe of him. And I just felt like my heart had just expanded into this. It changed my life.
Yeah.
And I remember, I was going to have a meeting because there was a little bit of a chance for me to work remotely part-time. And so I went in to have this meeting after, however many weeks of maternity leave, and I'm miserable. I find this young woman who can sit with my son. I am nursing, so I am just, that's kind of a whole thing unto itself. Yeah. And I go to have this meeting, and they don't want to accommodate a hybrid schedule. So it's like either you come into the office or not. So, and my husband and I had talked about this. So, but my husband at one point had said, when I was on maternity leave, the whole reason why I took this meeting was he had said, gosh, do you think we can really, afford having you stay at home?
Ah.
And I was like, what are you talking? Like, I actually didn't say anything because I was so, I didn't trust myself to speak in that moment.
Right.
And from that day forward, believe you and me, I feel like the minute my husband got home, I had a list of things that I could share that proved it was worth it for me to stay home.
Mm. Wow. There you go. There you go. And that is kind of the example of that lack of self-knowledge that you had in those
God,
days.
yeah.
Yeah. When you were doing the work with entrepreneurs, business owners as a coach, I know that you had seen this gap between the knowing and the doing. Like, I know I could, but I don't. And a lot of that is about not knowing yourself. And so
yes,
what would you share with them, and what were you doing in your own life to kind of bridge that knowing gap? Was that when the journals started to come into being?
Yes. As you mentioned, I'm working with independent business owners, entrepreneurs, and these are generally people who have founded their own businesses. So they're extremely passionate and connected to their business, right? Yep. And we are, the way that I worked, I got to know my clients very well, both their personal and professional lives, because those were so deeply intertwined when you are starting your own business or growing your own business. And we would talk about what the goals were, what the vision for the business, all of that. And we would create different sets of, actions that we wanted to take and that were going to get us the results that my clients, shared with me and stated that they wanted. And, then we check back in and, maybe for one client, it would have been to be more discerning around who they were going to take on as clients.
Okay.
So learn to say no to certain clients if they weren't going to be a good fit, right? And I would check in with them and I'd be like, hey, how was your week? And they'd be like, well, it was great. I've got 10 new clients or something. And I'd say, well, that's fantastic. Are they, that's great. So they've met your criteria that we established to kind of create a band of practice area that fits your skill set the best. And they'd be like, well, kind of, maybe it would be this thing. And I'm like, oh, and of course I felt for them because I'm like, I mentioned earlier the saying yes to everything, right? And the people pleasing, especially when you've got a financial pressure, right? So I'm thinking to myself, okay, I know how challenging it has been for myself to change, right? To make significant changes. I need to create a tool that will help build awareness in my clients. And that's where Spaghetti on the Wall was. That Spaghetti on the Wall began as this idea to help my clients really develop a habit of discernment. So it is a journal that has a set of prompts, and the idea is that you use it consistently each day, and it guides you through a section of journaling as a non-judgmental observer, right? Kind of a witness to what happened in your day. And then it asks you to do the experience evaluator, and that's the unpacking. Where were those big yeses? Where were the places that I call not so much, which means kind of the friction, the place where you felt like maybe you didn't speak when you knew you wanted to speak, or where you showed up in a way that you didn't want to show up. So that tool, I'm feeling quite good about myself. I'm like, this is going to be so great because this is going to, it's easy to use. It takes about, 10 to 15 minutes a day. It's going to be great. Yeah. And I start doing it with my clients because that's just the way I am. And I'm doing it. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. At this point, and it wasn't so much about my business, it was about my personal life. Yeah. And I was in my second marriage at this point, and I was doing some of the same old stuff, right? Of trying to prove my worth, trying to really taking responsibility for the happiness of this other person.
Yeah.
And taking full responsibility when it didn't work, which is pretty much 100% of the time, because no one else can create genuine happiness. And that word is, I feel a little bit, I'm conflicted using it, but let's say no one else is going to create serious peace, joy, or contentment in your own life except for you.
That's right. And so in that moment, you realized you needed your own tool that you created for other people.
Yeah. I'm like, Kristan, you're the one. I mean, yes, it was helpful for my clients, and they,
Yeah.
to this day, I still am in contact with many of my clients, and they love it, and I still use it each day.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, of course, it was just I had to laugh at myself. I'm like, oh my gosh. Look at what you're doing. Look at the patterns that you are, that you are repeating, and a lot of, I mean, certainly, not choosing the best person for myself in that second go around of marriage had to do with the fact that I didn't take the time that it really needed for me to sit with myself after my first divorce. And because it was so painful, I felt I was the one who initiated it. So I felt so much guilt, so much shame. I felt like I had failed miserably. My own parents were divorced, and I was not going to do that.
Right.
I was going to be better, and I was supposed to be better, right? My family was counting on me to be better. And boy, I couldn't sit with any of that because it felt so big and it felt so scary. And I mean, it brings tears to my eyes right now because I feel so tender towards that young woman that I was at that time who knew that that marriage was not healthy and she needed to get out, and that it was also impacting the lives of my children, and it was impacting my relationship with my family members.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's a big decision. I think divorce is one of those things that we think about in almost a casual way in this country, but it is a decision that for most people who move through it, it's hard to come by. It's hard to make the decision and then hard to move through the process, because there is seriously a reconfiguring of who you are as a person. You literally have to reassess everything about who you were and create something new if you're paying attention.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like between your first marriage and your second marriage, there wasn't a lot of time for sitting with and getting to know yourself. You kind of moved into another relationship. In your transferring from that second marriage, do you feel like you gave yourself that time, gave yourself like the permission slip, so to speak, almost like what your journals do? It gives people permission to sit with themselves and get to know themselves.
Yeah. I definitely did a much more intensive kind of, and not intensive in a again, it wasn't painful at this point. I think what, because it wasn't nearly as painful as getting married and divorced twice, right? I mean, by the time you go through divorce a second time, you're just like, really? I clearly, I need to get right with myself. Right. You need to look at yourself in the mirror, and fortunately I was able, I so much of kind of my growth also happened within that second marriage, and ultimately led to its dissolution.
Mm-hmm.
However, I felt like I really allowed myself to just be with kind of all those parts of myself, and especially the parts that I had been avoiding and that just weren't that appealing, or I thought they weren't that appealing, or and I also allowed myself to sit with the grief and loss of my first marriage, which hadn't really been processed. And
Mm-hmm.
there was so much, I had so much trepidation and so much fear because I just thought, oh gosh, this sense of loss that I've kind of pushed over here the way I thought about it, I was like, oh God, this is a black hole. I mean, if I get even close to that, I'm just going to get sucked up into it.
Right.
Right?
Wow.
And that's not what happens.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what happens.
Right. Exactly. I think oftentimes the feelings that we experience that we're always trying to keep in the jack, the jack in the box, keep the top
Right.
down, we feel like they're going to overtake us. But what the real goal has to be is to allow them to come up and move through us, right?
Yes.
Our bodies will release them. It may feel intense, but it will not feel intense all the time. It will not feel intense forever, right?
Yeah.
And so you learned by tuning inward that discernment that is really displayed in the framework for Spaghetti on the Wall. So where did the second journal come in play? And what is its, function for people?
Yes. So heart mapping is the it's the second journal I've created, and really I consider it to be a great companion piece to Spaghetti on the Wall because the modality is much different. It is giving a chance to use continuous line drawing as a way to reconnect with yourself.
Yeah.
And what the continuous line drawing is essentially, as it sounds, putting pen to paper and first taking a few breaths, getting yourself settled in the moment. And if you want to bring an intention to your practice, you may. And some days, the day that I really created heart mapping in its beginning little form is a day when I reached for Spaghetti on the Wall and I was just like, okay, my head is about to explode. There's just way too much going on. My body is just buzzing. I do not have the patience. I do not have I cannot put words to paper. I cannot do my normal journaling practice.
Yeah.
And I was like, so I need to do something because otherwise I just felt like I'm going to come out of my own skin, right?
Yeah.
And I remembered this really wonderful, one of my favorite teachers from middle school. We would do this very introductory drawing course. We would do this exercise where you would hold the pencil. We would be using graphite and put it to your pad, and you would be looking at your opposite hand, whatever. I'm left-handed, so I'd be looking at my right hand, and without looking at the paper, without removing the pencil, the graphite pencil, you would draw your hand. And I remember I I don't remember what my drawings ended up looking like. I'm sure that they were just all over the place. But what I do remember is I have this almost like somatic memory of how relaxing that was, and how it just, not only did the room of this, busy middle schoolers, imagine a room of 15 middle school girls, coming in from lunch, and they're just like, and you give them this exercise. It's like, the whole atmosphere, everyone is quiet. You begin breathing in a different way. And I remembered that, and I thought, this is what I need to do in this moment.
Yeah.
And then at least the other piece of awareness I've gotten, right, is that if this is a tool that I'm needing, I bet there might be at least one other person out there that might find this handy. And that's all I need. And
absolutely.
So I created heart mapping, and it gives you a chance to do that continuous line drawing on the left-hand page. And then the right-hand page is really an invitation to use that page and it has some words and there's instructions. But if you need to draw some more, or if you want to doodle, if you have in the process of doing your continuous line drawing, you want to now journal, kind of in a more traditional way, have at it. If you recalled a dream from the night before or that morning, it's so that facing page is really an open invitation for what you need next. And I do feel like through the process of that kind of just that really regulating type of, breath work that comes when you sit and do this continuous line drawing, you will know what you need next.
Yeah.
Right on that page. So you get to give yourself permission and you get to trust yourself.
I love it. That one really sounds like it helps to calm the nervous system. The the practice of continuous line drawing, which, so several overlapping communities that I'm in, a lot of us are introverts, some of us are on the spectrum, some of us have ADHD, ADD, or neurodivergent in some other way. And one of the things that is a constant when we're all in spaces together, people are either drawing or coloring or knitting. Because all of those practices are soothing, right?
Yes.
Drawing, and coloring or knitting.
Yeah. And it's and even the more traditional journaling practice of spaghetti on the wall. Again, I mean, what I love about journaling with pen to paper, pencil, whatever, marker, your choice, is that there is, just as you're describing, right, how soothing it is to do an activity that it's pulling our head. It's we're using our body to a certain extent, and and then I think as those, because so often our heads and our bodies are in, they're just not that connected. But I feel like when you can kind of get those pieces coordinated, then your heart is hanging out, waiting again, right? I mean, your heart kind of is like, hey, I'm just going to wait until, you all figure out if you're going to just settle in, right?
Exactly.
So that's why for me, also, I think it was when I was thinking about creating these tools, whether I had the awareness that it was for me or for clients, but as much as I love meditating, as much as I love taking a walk, as all these things, I needed something that kind of connected all that brought me fully into my body inside and out.
There we go. Perfect. And then the third journal is more like a workbook, the Spiritual Autobiography Workbook. What does that one offer people?
Yeah, so the spiritual autobiography is an exercise that I had taught many, many years ago as part of another class, and it has always stuck with me as this wonderful way to reflect on your past. And a few years ago, I felt a real longing to bring people together in conversation and in a way that was different than kind of the average conversation, and where we could talk about things that kind of got below the small talk, that really allowed for a sharing of kind of our universal truths and our experience as being humans. So I thought, the spiritual autobiography is the way to do this. And so it's a non-denominational, it is a writing exercise. I mean, the spiritual autobiography itself is ultimately about 1,000 to 1,500 words. And I always encourage people to think of it as a living document. The spiritual autobiography that I write today is very different than the one that I wrote last year or the one that I first wrote 20 years ago, right? Sometimes and it really has to do with noticing the connection you have with that which is bigger than yourself, right? And however you define that. And so I love writing them because sometimes it's going to be a snapshot of, kind of an awareness that came to me through a series of different events. Sometimes it's going to be kind of more chronological or, maybe a little bit more of a linear, kind of story telling to it. The workbook gives you several different, and when I teach this in a workshop, we do it, in community. The workbook is designed so you could self-guide or you could do it in your own small group. But it gives you several different exercises that are encouraging you to reflect on your past in kind of different ways. So there's exercises that ask you to think about an event using your different senses. And there's also the invitation to do some pattern recognition through another type of exercise, kind of seeing some of your own patterns, not necessarily maybe patterns of behavior, but patterns of, I guess one time when I did this exercise, I realized kind of the pattern of my friendships and how they've evolved over the years and kind of the seasons of my friendships, right? So there's it's essentially all these different exercises that you do that help guide you towards that ultimate assignment of your spiritual autobiography.
Okay. I love that. That's beautiful. And one of the things that I realized about all three of the tools that you've created is that none of them ask you to fix yourself. This is not about fixing yourself. It's really about you seeing yourself. You're invited to see yourself more clearly.
Yeah. I really, I wish I you know, I know how important and how life-changing it has been for me. And I know that maybe sounds dramatic or grandiose, but being willing to spend the time it took to get to know myself has been one of the best things I've ever done. And it has a tremendous ripple effect too. And this is why I'm so adamant, and my wish, I cut myself off, which I do all the time, but my wish is, that that maybe your audience, someone out there who feels like, they're curious about who they are, or feels like they have been really kind of neglecting parts of themselves, or just downright shunning parts of themselves. I just will say, my relationships with my family have improved. And not all of them. I mean, some of them, sometimes having more clarity around who I am also has meant some boundaries.
Oh, absolutely.
So, I mean, but I will say, I feel like I am a better parent having done this work. I feel like I am a better friend. I certainly am a better partner with my husband now. And I mean, it's not, and this is what I always say, it's not just about, navel gazing and knowing yourself, because what happens when you take the time to get to know yourself and begin to trust yourself, you then can make those choices, take action in a way that does less harm, meaning that you are operating then from a place of integrity and much more alignment. And that means you're operating kind of at your highest level, and you are able to kind of share that with the people that you come into contact with.
Absolutely. Yeah. You start to move about your life and the world as a more whole person.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so much, I will just say, it is so much lighter to be your whole self. I mean, I didn't realize, I just didn't realize how much effort it took to keep a lid on all those parts of myself that I was like, oh God, no, we're not bringing that out. and yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
Yourself is so much easier. And I wish that for everyone, to just be yourself. Get to know who you are and what gifts you have to give to the world, and express that in the world. Period. That's it. That's all.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, well, Kristan, this has been such a gift to have you here for this conversation. Your life has been really an example that has unfolded into works of art that people can really use and apply in their own lives. I love it. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Where can people find you?
I have a website, kristanswan.com, and that is a great place to take a look at the journals, at Spiritual Autobiography Workbook, and yeah, that's a really good place to start.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. And I'll make sure that that is listed in the show notes for today. And to everyone listening and or watching, if this conversation brought up something within you that you're starting to notice, go find Kristan's website. Look at the work that she offers the world. Explore the tools and choose one that speaks to you most for where you are in your life right now. And if these kinds of conversations are really resonating for you, I ask that you share the episode with someone who needs it, and like and subscribe on whichever platform you're watching or listening. And I look forward to seeing you back here in the expansion room. Thanks for watching. If you are ready to move beyond survival into greater alignment, greater clarity, and transformation, I'd love to support you. An alignment call is where that journey begins. Take a moment, click the link in the show notes, and schedule your alignment call with me, and let's explore what's possible for you together.